Today on the Social Studies Show, we have Fred Sands IV. Fred is an art director and graphic designer based in New York City, formerly a design and production coordinator at Paper Magazine. Fred's personal work is among the most circulated on social media today. It's rooted in nostalgia and culture, and he has made it its primary objective to create work that feels both innovative and familiar. With over 10 cumulative years of experience working as both a freelance artist and graphic designer within the production media industry, his clients include Netflix, SKYY Productions, Allyson Felix, MTV, Issa Rae Productions, SKYY Vodka, and more. Fred is highly regarded for pushing boundaries through digital and creative storytelling, and he strives to align himself with brands that aim to establish a revolutionary voice through design. So today on the Social Studies Show, we've got Fred Sands IV, amazing graphic designer and artist who has been featured in Paper Magazine, worked with Jada Pinkett-Smith, worked with Netflix, and I'm just going to get right into it because I think the funniest thing is just like how we met, right?
Yeah.
and I just think it's a funny story because, you know, Fred, I came across your work. I was scrolling the internet one day, like looking at some stuff and things like that, and I think Jada had posted your work, and I was like, damn, this artwork is dope. This is so cool. But I was like, wait, that's my photo, right? And like, luckily, like what was cool is like she had like put your stuff in. I just kind of reached out to you. I was like, hey man, really super cool artwork. Like, you know, like I just really appreciate it. It's like that's my photo. And you're like, oh, you're like, bet, you know, let me put that on you because you're like you have respect for artists and other people's work and what they're doing. Like, and I just thought that was like a super cool thing. And that really kind of like developed our relationship. And it really made me kind of like look at you because I know you worked with my friend Eric Humphrey and then like done stuff with Josh Kissy and done all these other different photographers. So just seeing like kind of the gravity and the respect that you've like kind of come through by developing your own work was like really amazing. And then just like that you came and be like, and like have that respect for photographers and other artists in the field and medium was just like a cool thing. So I thought that was really cool. That collage was absolutely amazing, just as a retrospective of Jada's work. And I just had never really seen anything like it. It was kind of like, kind of trying to think of, it was like a tasteful female blaxploitation kind of narrative of the thing,
Yeah.
of Shaft, but very female empowering.
Nail on the head, man. That was definitely on the mood board. The essence I was trying to capture was, you know, the blaxploitation era and those compositions, just the way that they built from literal ground outwards. So yeah, no, I'm glad that came through.
Yeah, no, and so like looking at that, I thought that was a really cool thing. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit, just kind of like getting into it. Is like you've had such a weird, interesting ride with like social media and like with your work. And something that was really kind of like spoke to me was just like the Angela Bassett piece that just kind of floated around, just kind of like as that. We'll get into it a little bit later, but
Okay.
I just have a funny story because last night I was talking to a friend and I'm like, who are you interviewing next for the Social Studies Show, right? And I'm like, Fred Sands IV. He's like this amazing designer. He's done stuff for all these different things. He does stuff for Paper, for Beyonce, for like, you know, Snowfall. And they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know his work. Tell me about it. I'm like that. And I was like, do you see that Angela Bassett Instagram post floating around? And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, that's Fred.
That's funny. Yeah, no, that happens sometimes, man. It literally, my work becomes so detached from me in the way that it's like the social media, like stratosphere is something else, man. I'll put something out there and it's no longer mine. It's the world's now. So, but I'm grateful that, you know, people resonated with that piece.
Yeah. I think the one thing that's super interesting about that, right,
Yeah.
is like the world and kind of like the culture took that and ran with it.
Oh, for sure.
Because it was like, although Angela Bassett didn't win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, it was like support from the culture. And I think that's where I look at something where your artwork basically galvanized this community and made them all be like, hey, Angela, we see you.
But you know what's so funny? That piece, I released that piece weeks before the Oscars. And I was like, it was almost like, and I remember when I released it, people were like saving this for when she wins the Oscars, saving this for when, you know, that moment, because I think people were, you know, like this could potentially be kind of the image for that moment. But what was so beautiful is that even though she did not take that award home, which is well deserved, past deserved, but that image still became, you know, monumental for that moment because we love Angela Bassett and we celebrate her regardless. So I'm thankful that that was one of those pieces that could transcend whatever, you know, the moment was. So yeah, very grateful.
So with that, like, I mean, for me, and just to jump back into it, tell me a little about your background. Like, how did you get started in this? Because I mean, like, one, obviously come from the South, coming from Atlanta, like you went to Howard University, and now you're getting into these big pieces of working with Paper Magazine and Netflix and designing movie posters and TV, things like that. Like, were you aware like this job existed kind of like when you were like coming up in Atlanta? Like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, not at all. I think, you know, growing up, I was one of those kids who just kind of, I knew that I was an artist in the way that I was always sketching, was always drawing. And, you know, I kind of went that route. Whereas like my brothers, I'm the oldest of three boys, and my brothers were in sports. You know, I was just kind of like the other one. And I was in music all through high school. And I was also learning Photoshop during that time. I was kind of teaching myself just because my dad had put Photoshop on our desktop computer at the house. So I just like, it's like, oh, I've heard about this. Let me, because, you know, I had been doing like some very, you know, basic pieces in like Windows and all of that kind of stuff. But once Photoshop was on the computer, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this out. And so I started teaching myself. And then I started to, you know, kind of take on some responsibilities in high school. Like I'll design the poster for the play and I'll do, you know, like things like that, just kind of like getting a feeling for it, but still had no idea that this was something that people did. At least that didn't connect for me because we didn't have people coming to job fairs like, yeah, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a key art artist, I'm a typographer. Like we didn't have people showing up representing that space. So when I went to college, when I went to Howard, I kind of became the like principal graphic designer on campus because, you know, I was working with homecoming and I was working on people's elections. You know, student elections are a big deal. So I was kind of entrusted with those graphics. And I think I started to, you know, get it then that could be a frugal
thing.
Yeah, it could be a thing. It could be a lifestyle. I didn't think that it could be a full-time thing. I was like, oh, this must just be a thing that people can do, right? This is just a skill that people have. And I think when I was leaving college, I applied for paper as an intern. And, you know, back then, well, when I say back then, I mean like 2016. In 2016, they were, at least at the time, they weren't really, the intern to hiring ratio wasn't super like large. It was kind of rare. But I didn't realize that I was kind of coming in as an intern on the heels of this other their designer leaving and, you know, moving on to another job. So they were actively looking for another designer. And I was one of those interns. I was just like, hey, I don't just want to come into the office every day. Please trust me with things. I want to learn. Like I was green, but I was also very, you know, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to do stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, yeah, use me is what I was like. And, you know, they started to trust me with bigger and bigger projects and they ended up hiring me on. And I was there for 4 years, you know, just mostly doing experiential design work for events and activations and campaigns. So, you know, I kind of got to build this roster of amazing clients just via paper. And I ended up leaving paper in 2020. What's funny is that you mentioned Eric Humphrey. I did the Black History Month covers for paper, the digital covers for paper, and it was Lena Waithe's, like her TV shows that were on BET and also like her individual cover. And those ended up being covers that we won a Muse Award for advertising. And so I won my first award on the heels of leaving paper and started doing, you know, my own just kind of freelance, full-time freelance thing. And it was the best decision for the time because I got to explore who I am as an artist and really understand what what role I wanted to play in the space that I'm in. Because, I moved to New York and it was literally just get straight to work. And then for 4 years, I was at Paper and I was, a designer under someone else's roof. And I never really got to go on that journey of who are you and what is the type of work that you actually want to do. So yeah, that's how it started, man.
So there's like a couple of pivots from there, just kind of like looking at that, because one, I just want to talk to you about like what are some of the ups and the downs of the freelance industry, because there's the freedom of doing things, but also there's rejection and looking for work, and just like the hustle and motivation. So if you could kind of take me through that for your journey.
Yeah, I mean, it started I felt very fortunate in the way that it started. I started my freelance journey, my full-time freelance journey, at least, on the heels of the pandemic starting, and just all of this. There was also this time in 2020, tragically, where Black people were just being like, the Black Lives Matter movement reached an incredible peak on a very it was kind of a dark moment in that time. And I think that a lot of people, companies and brands, started looking for Black artists to represent their voice or to collaborate with and things like that, which in retrospect is a conversation within itself. But
it's like it sparked an awareness, but the whole thought of like the whole long-term process of where is this actually like going to go, and what is this going to change, and how is it going to implement sustainability in this space, is I think what a lot of companies didn't necessarily come to from the thing. They have like the gut reaction, because like, all of a sudden it's like, like it's like a wound that's bleeding. Like, let's just try to throw a Band-Aid on it. But sometimes you might need some stitches and like a full like cleansing and like clean out, and then like figure out how to like, and then comes rehab,
Yeah, no, I think that what they lacked, or what a lot of companies lacked at that time, was kind of intention and honest intention behind what this looks like going forward, not just what it looks like once you post that black square on Instagram. But regardless, at the top of that year, I got to work with Jada Pinkett-Smith, and they reached out to me asking me to create like 2 pieces for her. One piece was a commission piece for just Red Table Talk with her and Gammy and Willow, and then the other piece was to be a tribute piece to her career. So that was really the first big commissioned freelance piece that I did that got a lot of attention, I'll say, because I've done other commissions, but it wasn't on that level. And so I think it was like this weird thing was happening, because while I was still at Paper when I was doing this, but it was also March 2020. So it was kind of like I was getting this awakening, like, oh, you know what, maybe if I had enough faith in myself, I could actually do this, and I can get clients like this, and I can, sustain this. And I was also battling, but I'm not happy here at my job. I kind of want to go. And it's like, the whole taking the leap aspects, with also that other voice in your head was like, you live in New York, man. Come on now. Like, it's the angel and the devil, right? And
also just having faith in your own talent.
Yeah, no,
it's a hard thing where you're like, I don't have like, it's like the funniest thing that I just saw recently is like, it's like, maybe I don't have a lot of money, but I have a lot of talent, and that makes up for the whole thing of that. And like, sometimes you got to believe in the talent aspect, and that'll bring you the money.
That's good. Yeah, that's it. But when you don't have people who showed up, and when you don't have a lot of representation growing up, you don't know that if you take this leap, that is a good thing, because it's not like you have a trajectory that you can follow. You're literally going on this journey just kind of in the wilderness, and it's scary, right? So for me, it was like, no matter how much talent I have, will I be able to sustain? Will I be able to really make this work? And I just kind of did it, because I felt like everything in my body was telling me to move. And I was like, who am I to reject what's,
Can I ask you a question? In a lot of these things, in a lot of these places, were you like probably the first person or minority in the space?
Yeah.
So I think that's the hard part when you're trailblazing, because you have nothing to follow, right? So you have to kind of like go and learn. And I think that's a very important piece that I kind of want to show and tell you, that, because like, if you're doing that, you are a trailblazer, and you're figuring out the method. And like that, after behind you, like so many people are benefiting. I mean, obviously that's one of the reasons why I want to have me on the show, but
Yeah.
like it's hard when you're in that space of like trying to figure it out, you know, because like
Yeah.
you know, working in New York, like it's like, and working at paper, and I've just like I assisted on Vanity Fair and Vogue shoots and things like that, and there are a lot of people that look like us, and it's a hard thing to kind of like have people know how to like operate in that system.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at paper, I was okay. Let me kind of break it down for you just a bit, and we can move off of paper. Paper was agency and editorial, which is not foreign because that's how a lot of magazines kind of sustained. I worked more so on the agency side, but I was the only designer on the agency side. So imagine at 24, 25, like 23, taking on all of that weight as not only the only designer, but a minority in the office. All of us were literally just kind of like peppered in, and you know, it was a lot. So I think that I kind of had to deal with whatever kind of, I guess, attachment or a trauma bond I had created because I was like, I don't know if I can leave this place and if I'll find anything find another place that'll, you know, allow me to do all of these things. But, you know, obviously limited mindset. But yeah, no, I definitely, I'm so glad that I took that leap because literally on the heels of leaving paper, I got my first global campaign with SKYY Vodka, which was not supposed to be a global campaign. It was actually just, they had commissioned me to do like some web static pieces for the web for Black Lives Matter, All Queer Lives Matter, like that movement. And they had commissioned me to create the artwork for it, but they saw the artwork. I think I only had like a day to do it anyway. So it was supposed to be a quick little project. I only had a day to do it. And I remember I did it. I was in New Orleans and I remember I did it one morning, literally within 3 hours. And then I shared the artwork with them. And they're like, we would love to buy this out. Like, we want to put this everywhere. I was like, wait, what does that mean?
Oh my God, but what's my licensing deal? Because that's like learning all that stuff, right? Like all of a sudden,
no, literally, it was.
What does the whole buyout licensing mean?
Exactly, which is where the money is, the buyout, the out of home. That's, you know, all of that is where you really start to see the figures. But yeah, no, that was the first time that had ever happened to me. And after that, I did Netflix, and that came with its own challenge because it was literally, I think I started it in July and we finished in October, and it was out in November. So it was just it was my first time working on a big key art project. And we literally took, like, I think I did maybe, if I had to round up how many drafts I did for that piece, maybe 50, 60, like
there's a lot of people that got to check off on that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the process is, you know, you start with like, once you're onboarded, it's like, oh, let's do a few just to see where your mind goes from this. Okay, we like these. Let's take these two. Now let's create 50,000 variations of this so that we can get it in front of Pharrell and his team and see what they like. Okay, they like this one. Now let's create 50,000 variations of this one so that we can narrow it down to, you know, what'll end up being the billboard, the out of home, the, you know, on the app, all of that kind of stuff. So it's been, I think my career has been a testament to the learn by fire concept, like just getting in there and just doing it. And, you know, it's been a journey.
No, and then like that's the cool stuff because again, like, you know, thinking about that, you started in high school in Atlanta, like playing around with Photoshop and there.
Yeah, exactly.
So like now, right? It's like thinking about having these things of like key art and like design and advertising and marketing implemented into like a high school level for diverse communities there, like because I mean, like, I'll tell you an interesting story. Like Russell Westbrook, he does a nonprofit foundation over here in Inglewood where he's teaching diverse kids how to fly drones.
See,
you know, so it's just like one of those things where like if you have the opportunity, and so when we talk about that, of sort of even circling back to the gut reaction of doing something for representation and having it with intent, like once you start seeing the intent start trickling all the way down to like the youth and like changing their lives, then you understand the path of intent. And so that's something where like you have to be in those communities and understand them. I think that's why it's really important to tell your story. Just hearing this, just like, you know, you're like, buyout licensing, what? Like, like I'm just making some art. And then all of a sudden, like, that's a whole nother thing because it's like you're going through legal, you're going through agents, you're going through distribution. You're looking like, okay, well, what are the distribution numbers so I can set up my number for my my payout for my licensing, right? Like, how many people are going to see this? I'm like, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah,
right?
but see, that's the thing. It's like that's another hurdle that you have to kind of cross or jump over when you are freelancing. It's the merging of the artistry with the business, because a lot of us don't. I can only speak for myself. I did not get into design for it to become a business. I got into it because it fulfilled me and it gave me a sense of purpose where I didn't feel that I had it. So it was a much deeper beginning for me. And then once you get into the business of it, you just kind of find yourself being like, okay, wait, okay, I don't know. Okay, how do I fix? It's like I'm asking friends, I'm talking to fellow designers. Shout out to people like Teamy Coker. I've known him since he was just solely doing photography, and now he's a force in the design industry. And I'm so proud to have peers who have juggled this kind of or not juggled, but been in this space with me. And it's important to have peers who are also designers or creatives, because nobody speaks our language like we do. And
also like having a community that wants to see you succeed.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, no, I hear the same thing, because I was just talking to my team the other day and we're like laughing because I was just like, I got into this because I like creating, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I realized, damn, I got to make money.
Yeah.
Like you gotta make a living.
So it goes from like the hustle to the legitimate business. It's like it goes through all of these different phases. And I'm thinking back on it like now. When I have conversations like this, I get to think back on my career, because I don't, every day I'm not thinking about that. But I do think about how far I've come, and I'm like, man, I remember how green and how much I didn't know. You know what I mean? And nobody really, I think that a lot of these brands, a lot of these businesses are just out for the bottom line. And if you don't advocate for yourself, then who will do it,
For sure. So, and I think that's the one thing, but I mean, obviously you're doing some great work. And I think people like, when people see the quality of work that you're doing, like, I think when people come knock on the door, they know that there's going to be a price. And I think that's an interesting part of like being like doing such quality work. And I kind of wanted to talk about your, the Beyonce like pregnancy art piece, right? Because like that's just a quality piece, right? And when you put it out with that magnitude, people like, okay, we want this guy, and it's going to cost. And also, I think when you look at that as far as like branding yourself, because I think there's two different ways of artistry, like, right? Like people go around and try and bid and just try and find like the most sustainable solution for whatever they're trying to do.
Exactly.
But then also people like, I need a statement piece. I need Fred Sands. Like, and I think that's a certain thing where people thinking about and understanding where your brand is and what you're doing and how you're actually going about yourself.
Yeah.
It's something I go around where like I want people to come to me for photography because they want a Stan Evans photo. And so I think when you do that and you establish yourself on that level, then that's something that's really like will keep you in business, because people are coming specifically for you. So can you tell me about a little bit how the Beyonce piece came about?
It was, it's funny, that was just a personal piece, actually. I don't know if that was just a piece that I just did because Beyonce is a great muse. I love quality photography. I love capturing a moment that's happening. And I think that that's one thing that I really do attribute to my career, is that I'm one of those artists who can capture the kind of the pulse of a moment and just really encapsulate that through artwork. But I did that just as I loved I imagined her photo as this kind of Renaissance piece, which now thinking about it, I named that piece Renaissance. My mind. I named that piece Renaissance way back in 2017. But so I did that piece, and then W Magazine picked it up, and it ended up, I think that was probably one of the first pieces actually that ended up doing that whole thing where it goes through different channels, and it just like it starts one place and then they ask you if you can do it here, and the next thing you know it's like everywhere. So that's when I really started to see that, I think, or understand the virality, like the viral culture, you know what I mean? And from there, it literally, I think I just started to just create more and more things with muses of mine, Solange, and just like all kinds of people that I had been inspired by. And I think that just connecting with them gave me this audience where people were like, oh, I think they got to see how inspired I am by music and by film and movies and things. Film and movies are the same thing, but you know what I mean. But yeah, it's like, I think that I really have been able to capture this, have been on the pulse of the culture and capture that in my art. And I feel grateful. And you know what's funny? You made a point about how people want to work with you just based on, like, I guess, your stamp, your signature. There's an essence to this person's work that we want captured. And I feel like what people have started to make me understand about my own work is that they were like, Fred, you have, like, it's your taste. It's not just about the technical ability. It's not about knowing Photoshop. It's not about, all of that kind of stuff. You have a perspective that is so unique and so rooted in something. And in my culture, especially growing up in the South, Black culture is, it's who I am to the core, obviously. But, there's a level of taste that goes into how I think through my compositions. I can see one image and I can build an entire world around it. So I feel that is my gift, of course, is being, design and all that technical stuff. But the greatest gift is my perspective, the way I think, my mind. You know what I mean?
Well, I think something that's really, and I want to touch on, because I really want people to go and examine your work after they see this show, right? You have an aesthetic, and your aesthetic is a page stopper. And I think something that I noticed is really you have a very, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Astute vision of Black female empowerment.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so, and like, coming from a male perspective, like, normally you don't really see it. It's normally we kind of female artists who kind of tap into that in a way. And like, you've definitely kind of like tapped into it in a different way as far as your aesthetic goes. And just some of my favorites are like the Spectrum with Lupita. The whole, like, that's an amazing piece. Like, I just, like, love the color wheel, because again, as a photographer, like, looking across the color wheel and checking out all the thing, like, that's where the show stopping comes, because I look at it, I know I did it as the color wheel. I know it's Lupita and all the different things, and it makes you think, because it's like you're internalizing all these things that you see. And so when it's coming from different pieces or places or perspectives from my past, and things that I might future see, or that I might, like, inspire me to create, that's where the show stopping comes from your work.
That's beautiful. Thank you for saying that. And it's so interesting. A lot of my artwork can come from a single phrase that I hear that kind of, permeates in my mind, that allows me to think down a certain, like, I'll go down a rabbit hole and be like, oh, that is a cool concept. Like, people used to say, people still say, Lupita looks great in every single color. She does not miss. She looks amazing in every color, and that's rare. And it's amazing how just that took me down a rabbit hole of, like, what trail of thought, where I was like, oh, what's so interesting? Like, she does a good in every color. It's like you go down the color wheel and she can master every single thing. And I was like, a color. It's like, it's amazing how that kind of happens. And then the Angela Bassett, I did that piece because that clip wouldn't leave my mind. The Angela Bassett did the thing, Ariana DeBose. I was like, this is so funny. I love that piece, or not that piece, but that saying. And it's just like, I was like, I have to do something, because she does do the thing. And then, that became a whole thing in itself. But yeah, like, I can attach to just a saying or a phrase or a moment that I've seen and things like that. And it'll take me down this entire journey to creation. And I love that process so much.
Well, it was interesting because it was like a different dynamic. And interesting when you work on male position subject, right?
Yeah.
So I looked at your Candyman and I looked at your Snowfall stuff.
Yeah.
And while it's different and, like, it's great stuff, it has a different aesthetic than, like, the female, like, embodiments things. And like when you go back and, like, look at them side by side,
I might need
they're amazing, right? But there's a different kind of, like, feel for the two. And I just thought that was really interesting to kind of look at. But also, like, getting back to it, because we can kind of go back, I was really curious about your Black Boy Fly, like, designing that with Joshua Renfro. you know? So how did that come about, and like kind of like what's your inspiration and looking at that as far as like designing predominantly for women's subjects versus male subjects?
That's such a great conversation. I'm glad that because you're awakening that in my own mind. I didn't even think of that. The male versus the female perspective. But I met Josh at CultureCon in 2017, and we were just kind of like, hey, I know you. Hey, cool, good to see you in person. And then the following year, he was like, hey, I want you to sit down with me and I have this book project that I'm working on. And Josh, when we sat down, he had a computer full of folders, or just like a drive full of folders, and it was every photo shoot that he had done for the book. And it was so organized, but it was also beautifully chaotic in the way that it's like, okay, I can see that there's something here. And when Josh, because when he emailed me, he sent me like, some of the photography, and I was like, I have to do this, yo. It was my first book project, full book project, especially. I had done contributing before, but I had never done a full book project, cover to cover. And we went through it's funny, I was just with Josh yesterday and we were talking about this. January to July was that process, January 2018 to July 2018. And he basically handed it off to me. He was like, yo, I trust you. And what I would do is I would design a few sections every week, and then we would come together the following week and we would make our notes. And it was always just very cosmetic stuff, though. Josh had like an immense trust in me, which I'm grateful for, because it taught me a lot about how to trust my own intuition and my own voice, and those gut feelings that come to creation and things like that. But there were so many references, man. I mean, and Josh is the type of photographer that is just so rooted in culture as well. And one of my favorite sections in that book is the barbershop section, where we got to kind of channel this. I remember telling Josh, I was like, yo, I remember seeing the barbershop, because it was like these vignettes of Black men, and it was like they were just kind of like portraits, and there were like homes and pics and things like that. And I was like, Josh, what if we did like one of those posters where, if you look in the barbershop, it's like, I want the number 14, I want the number 4, like those kind of.
Yeah.
I was like, this should be like the section opener, but it should be a spread. And Josh was like, oh, that's fire, Fred. We got to do it. So it was moments like that where I got to replicate, these iconic moments in our being. And that was so cool to me. And he really, like, Black Boy Fly grew legs and flew after that, because it was just amazing how you can't go to somebody's apartment or their home in Brooklyn, especially, or Harlem, without them having Black Boy Fly. It's crazy how much that book has like resonated with people.
It's funny because I mean, I don't have the book. I'm sorry, my bad. I'm in LA, but we'll get one.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I was just wondering on the treatments, like, right? Did you like do different treatments of that? Because like, when you go walking by the shop and the bodega, everything, and they have the laminated version, and it's like faded,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
when it's kind of faded, like it would be cool to have seen, like if you kind of like could have like made that, or just like done a vignette of like maybe just putting one in a wall and someone walking by, so then it becomes a piece like within the book kind of thing. Because like that's a whole vibe. Like you just have to know that kind of place where the fade, like
things right. And it's things you don't think about, things that are here, but you don't think about them in depth until it's like you have to pull from this place in your mind where it's like a reference. And I'm really good with references, because I can remember something just off of a feeling. It's like, I remember being in a barbershop and this is what I would see around me. This section gives me that feeling. We should encapsulate that. And also with like the college section in the book, I was like, we should use, I want to create like these, first of all, the lettering has to kind of have this Greek effect, but not, D9 Greek, but more so just like the Greek, ligatures and things like that. But I was like, we need to use like these textured letters, the ones that come as patches on Letterman's. Like it's little things like that. I'm like, it's little things like that like make a difference in taking people to that place so that they can understand what we are when they're looking through this section. So we went on a lot of journeys like that, man. It was literally just getting messy, throwing wet paper towels at the wall and seeing what stuck. It was fun. And I'm so glad that people look at that book and, have the feelings that they do about it. It's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, definitely need to go check it out.
Yeah.
But I think also I want to talk to you about like working within parameters and kind of like commercial projects versus personal projects, because like I saw the Abbott Elementary and I think that was like a wonderful piece. And and then the Journal for Jordan and doing
Yeah.
Snowfall and Judas and the Black Messiah. Like
Mhm.
what's the process like that of like working with commercial clients and actually like either going out and like seeking those jobs or how they come to you, and then like what's your process of like putting them together and like do they fulfill you? Like how do they fulfill you?
So it's interesting. Journal for Jordan and Judas and the Black Messiah were the commission pieces, and Abbott Elementary and Snowfall were the personal pieces.
Okay.
So Judas and the Black Messiah and what was the other one that I just said? What was the other one that you just mentioned? Judas and the Black Messiah and
Abbott Elementary.
Abbott Elementary, and also the Candyman piece. No,
Yeah.
not Abbott Elementary. Candyman, Journal for Jordan, Judas and Black Messiah. Those are all from the production studio. They reached out to me because they wanted to have these pieces. I think they were working with artists to, because a lot of times when they're releasing a film, people work with these brands, collect this kind of roster of artists that they work with to, create their own interpretations of the film and
Mhm.
their own artwork to really kind of further promote the film. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how that happened. But it was more so like, hey, we loved working with you for, I think the first project I did with them was, it was one other film that I had done artwork for, but they came back to me, and that's relationship equity is very important in freelance life, especially because they'll keep, coming back and working with you because they trust you, your quality of work, your timeliness, your communication, all of those things matter.
I love that relationship equity. That's a good one.
That's good. My friend taught me that. I love that.
Okay. All right. Well, we can
I
put
didn't
that
go
in
with
the
that, but
notes.
that was great. Yeah, relationship equity, it matters because we can go down that in a minute. But yeah, like they came to me and they were like, hey, here are these assets. I didn't even get, and I think that this prepared me for my work in key art.
Mhm.
I did not get to see the films prior to designing these pieces of artwork.
Mm.
I didn't get to see a Journal for Jordan. They were trying to get me a screener. I couldn't get one. I didn't get to see Candyman, but I remembered the original, but it was so long ago that I had seen Candyman. I feel like I should probably stop saying it at this point. It's been so long ago since I had seen that movie, and I kind of remembered the essence of it, but then I went down a rabbit hole. What I do, my process oftentimes is I'll go watch interviews. I'll go down the rabbit hole of like, let me see what pictures they've taken for the film. Let me go and look at every piece of imagery that I can surrounding this. Sometimes the studios will release imagery from on set, all of that kind of stuff. So that's how I gathered as much as I could to build the piece for A Journal for Jordan, for Candyman, and for Judas and the Black Messiah, because I had not seen either of those films until after I designed.
All I'm saying is I'm remembering Franklin saying like you portrayed him, not like how he ended up in the show. That was sad, man. I was just like, damn.
that was interesting too. And I did that piece because I was, first of all, a huge fan of Snowfall. And when I watched the finale, I was like, man, I want to create a piece that just like kind of feels like LA, feels like that part of LA where he's from. And I went down all these different rabbit holes of how I was going to do it, but I was like, I'm just going to keep it simple.
Have you ever been down those streets in Inglewood?
No, never. And I've been to LA.
They're beautiful. Like it's like the most perfectly lined palm trees. It's funny because like it's like funny because like a lot of white people don't go like shoot down there, but it's like it's perfectly lined rows, and so you really captured it. And I really loved how like you had them hiding behind the trees. Like I missed that at first, right? Because I was looking on my phone, and then I like saw your thing, and I was like, oh damn, I got to go back. And it's just like there's a lot of hidden gems you put in stuff, man. Like I love
details make it. That's my thing. The details make it, because I feel like there's this balance that you have to create between what is prominent in your artwork, but also what, like, if you're gonna show some, I guess, additional themes and things, it doesn't all have to be crowded. It's like, how do you create this delicate? It's a dance, right? Like you have to know which things. But let me tell you, humbly, I have done some terrible pieces that should not have been created. Man, I have, but you have to create some mess in order for it to be polished. Like you go through the fire and out is pure gold, as I always say. And as I grew up hearing, like you have to really not be ashamed of creating work, no matter how great it looks, no matter how amazing or not as amazing it is received. I have gone through all of that. And I remember this one time, MTV reaches out to me every year, and we do like a year wrap up where they're like the artists who have had a great year. And I remember, because I don't work.
I want to talk to you about Takeoff's piece too, please.
Oh yeah, okay. But yeah, but no, I don't. I have limited experience, I'll say, working with white skin or with skin that is not melanated. And so I did these pieces, and it was just like a few of them, and one of them was BTS. I think it was The Weeknd, it was Doja, BTS, the K-pop group BTS, and it was one other person. And I got drugged through the mud, like that BTS piece. The filtering that I put over the faces, it was just not great. It was not this good. I made some mistakes on the way that I
poor choice.
Yeah, like the portraiture was not as believable and realistic because I was trying to do one thing and it came off a different way. And that's when I kind of learned, okay, there's also a sensitivity you have to have about certain things as you're designing, because they'll try to think that you're trying to do something that you're not. That's the best way that I'll say that. But
well, it's really interesting to come to that and looking at shows and looking at how people light and looking at good DPs, because when you look at stuff like, if you look at the DP at Snowfalls, this guy Tico, and then looking at Issa Rae, there's a distinct where people know how to light black skin. But it's also a thing when you see it when there's a mixed group, where you have to kind of like light for both. And a lot of times you have to actually do singularity of art, where you're actually doing specific when you're lighting those type of scenes and put different things on different nets and kind of like diffusion on that to kind of even everything out, right? Yeah. And so that's something I've had to learn as a photographer, of being able to shoot both ways, something like that. And like, that's something where, I see, like, I mean, like, it's been really cool seeing some of the empowerment as far as like black photographers that way, but also like, I want people to be able to work in both ways, because that's how we're going to succeed. You got to like make money and be able to shoot, be able to
it's versatility.
Put in and showcase like Asian people, white people, Latino community, things like that. So that's something I really strive on, trying to be able to like shoot all races and all creeds and do it authentically. So it's interesting. I'm glad you shared that kind of piece so people just understand that, right? Because like, it's a valuable asset in commercial work.
There are these nuanced parts of, especially the type of work that I do, because it's all compositional. I've done work where the shadows were off, and I've had to kind of reckon with that, because that's a consideration that you have to have. All shadows don't just go, backwards, right? There are some shadows, like if you look at the image that you're using, if the shadow's going over here, like the snowfall image, part of why that piece looks so realistic is because the shadows are all moving naturally how they're meant to. But I had to learn that, but by trial. So yeah, there are so many considerations that people aren't being taught. And people get so stuck in, I know how to use Photoshop, I can make this, I can make a flyer. But it's like, when you get into the details and the crooks of, just kind of how to really capture the realness of these things. And I know that my work kind of teeters on this ethereal and realness line, but it depends on what I'm trying to capture. But I'm always going to ground it in realness, because
it's super interesting when you're like looking at some of those posters, like either the Candyman and like even like the Jada piece, right? It's like, do you remember the old Star Wars posters?
Yeah, I do.
Where like there's like, it's like Luke's holding the sword and Leia's underneath him, and then Darth Vader's kind of coming out the thing like that, right?
Yeah, those are compositions that inspired me for sure.
So when you like look at those compositions and like that, and I think that's something I think is really interesting when you're talking about like the little like subtleties and details, right? Something that really goes, especially for key artwork and like doing movies and commercial stuff, is there's a lot of Easter eggs in your work. You have to kind of like look at the stuff.
I love it.
It's like really cool when like you do that, because I don't know if you ever thought about it, but it complements a trailer very well. Because when people are trying to figure out what the movie is about, and you're hiding those Easter eggs kind of in the key art or things like, it goes, because like, I don't know if you like look, but like on YouTube, there's all these different like fan theories, and people just go down the rabbit hole of like what the trailer meant and what the poster meant. So it feeds this whole ego thing where you like look at that, where like, I mean, I know Amazon right now is like going deep into the whole like influencer universe as far as like what influencers get for seeing and screen and trailers. And that influencer audience has gone, it's like, it's a viable market when you like look at Comic-Con and those type of things. So there's a whole lot that's actually in there. So like,
Yeah.
think about that a little more consciously maybe next time we're creating stuff, because it does fit very well with movie trailers.
Yeah. I mean, you know, especially doing key art, that's another dance you have to do where it's like, okay, if we add this, is it telling too much of the story? Is it, you know, like things like that are considerations I've had to learn to have, you know, designing for all of these things. Yeah.
I got a couple more questions for you. So tell me about like, I mean, I love the recent like part that you've done on Janet, but then you just went to the concert. And, like, I know you were doing a bunch of research in there, and like, it's all like,
Yes.
what's your process of like, you know, identifying with artists and like almost like, I mean, it's like you almost kind of like give it a blip of resurgence for the artist of whoever it is, even when you're coming back to these different past people into new, and like, I don't know, like what's your fascination, or what's the thing that kind of like pushes you in that direction to kind of bring out even just retrospectives to current times?
Yeah, you know, what I will say, a lot of that is attributed to the fact that I am a cinephile. Like, film is paramount in my, you know, in my thinking all the time. My grandmother, I have to attribute her to really just showing, like, she put me on, as people say, like, I know who Bette Midler and like all of these people who
Gold Girls in it.
Yeah, like I know the people. So naturally, my soul, I have a very mature soul. So I think that naturally I'm always in a throwback type of, I guess, mindset. But you know, like people, I think that when you look at my work, you can kind of tell what space I'm in at, like, personally. Like when I designed the Janet piece, I was going down my yearly Janet rabbit hole. And I know that I say that a lot, but I was going down my, you know, listening to all her records type of situation. And then I also got inspired to do that piece because her documentary was coming out at the top of last year. And so a lot, I don't know, I think that I do a lot of just kind of film research and things like that. And I go and listen to old songs, and it'll take me from one place to the next. And like I was listening to Sylvester the other day, and then I went down a Martha Wash journey, and you know, like all of those different things. So I don't know, it's just, it's interesting. I wish I could put that into words for real, but I think it's just, I'm a very random guy when it comes to what inspires me. And I think that I try to capture what I'm feeling. And I think that that's the beauty of knowing who you are as an artist also, or just even as a person, because a lot of people would be like, oh, well, this probably won't get a lot of likes. People don't know who this is. But I'm like, well, I'm inspired to create it, so I'm going to share it maybe. And, you know, if they like it, they like it. Like Phyllis Hyman, doing a piece on Phyllis Hyman in 2018. Like, who is, you know what I mean? It's not like she had a doc coming out. It's not like there was anything like super relevant happening. But to me, Phyllis Hyman is always relevant because she's a legend. So it's like, I don't know. I'm the type of person who just pulls references from my own just memory and recollection of how I grew up. And growing up in the South, we had musical influences like that just out the wazoo, man. And I'm just a naturally very film and music inclined person. So I think that a lot of my work is a tribute to that.
Okay, well, I got two last questions for you, actually three. But first one is like, what was one of your favorite projects and why?
One of my favorite projects was actually the Aretha Franklin piece that I got to create for RCA, or for Warner Brothers, or Warner Music Group, excuse me. They reached out to me just like, hey, we're doing these cover recreations for Black History Month, which apparently is when I shine. During very Black moments in the year, I think I get a lot of
17 coming up, bro.
So yeah, exactly. So we're gonna see what happens there. But yeah, no, that ended up being a part of the repackaging of that vinyl to be sold to indie retailers, all throughout the country. And so I think that was really cool because her estate signed off on it. I'm like, Aretha Franklin's estate, man. Like, I was like, oh, I've basically worked for the queen at this point. So I feel like moments like that were really cool. And I've always loved the Young Gifted and Black album. So that piece, to be able to recreate that cover or reimagine that cover, is still one of the most, I don't even know if I've thought about it and sat with it and was like, wow. I think I just kind of like went on to the next project, but that was a big one for me.
Awesome. So my next question is, what's next?
Hey, I mean, you know what? I'm actually working on creating a learning hub now. I'm working on like figuring out that world of, you know, creating content to teach and things like that. I'm doing a lot more just kind of talking because I feel like it's important that people hear, you know, my journey and see that the representation is there. And I'm working on some key art projects right now. I'm really into my key art bag right now. So
Nice.
that's
Well, I've got some connections to definitely send your way. But then the other thing I was going to tell you, if you're looking at that, is you should check out Virgil Abloh's Foundation Postmodern, where they do that, where it's the whole thing is like free game. Because like you'd be a great lecturer on that. Not to try to like diminish my own show here, but
saying that. You know what? I've always kind of run away from the teaching piece of it because it was just like, I don't know how to teach artists to be artists. You know, I was always like, art is so subjective, but I think I understand now the nuance of, you know,
I think it's getting people to search within themselves and just also
Yeah.
see what else's options are out there. And I think when you can kind of put those two together, people will find their own path. But I think you need to take those 2 points. And I think just for me, like just to wrap up the show here is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Ah, man. What advice would I give to my younger self? You know what? I think that one thing I struggled with when I was younger was the thought that my purpose was small, and the thought that just because I wasn't doing something, like I wasn't playing sports and I wasn't, you know, popular and running track and all of those kinds of things, I felt like I didn't really have a significant purpose. But you fast forward to me standing in the middle of Times Square and my work is blown up, and you know what I mean? If I could tell my younger me anything, it's like, believe in your purpose and believe that you're worthy more than anything. Like, as an artist, you won't have a lot of people preaching to you or telling you that what you do is good enough, because they don't understand the artistry piece of it. They think that it's a hobby, right? And they just see it limited in that space. But understand that your purpose can be magnified, it can be worthy, it can be, you know, inspirational even. I think that that's the place where I'm in now in my life, is when people tell me how much my work has impacted them or resonated with them, I'm able to receive it now because I've gone through that journey of understanding just how far I've come, man. And you know, there's a beauty in that. So yeah, I would just say, no matter how small it seems, no matter how much you don't understand it, just keep going with it and watch your purpose unfold, because it'll blow your mind, man. Once you really see what happens. So.
No, I think that's great, and it's a great message, because I think what is in there in the Cliff Notes version of that is like the lexicon of the Black male has shifted, and like the whole thing that people like coming up when we did, and these times like that, the measure of success was sports or music, right? And so now all of a sudden, when you like go and like you open these doors on what your lexicon of what the vision of Black male success is, and all of a sudden you can put that in a mirror and it's you.
Wow.
I think that changes things in there, and also gives kids a different hope and an idea of what they can become. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because I was the same way. Like, you know, like I was in art. I was an AP band, you know, like like AP art, you know, like I was like, you know, I was like okay at sports, but I wasn't like great or anything like that. You know, I'm like, you know, I'm like writing poetry and doing other things and taking photos. I'm like, it's a weird, I mean, I'm not saying this for you, but it's like weird definition of being on the verge of like being like kind of a nerdy Black kid, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you don't have people coming to job fairs representing this space. It's always STEM, it's always business, and it's like you feel like you have to conform to those spaces. So when you don't do that, then it's like, am I the weird one? Am I strange? Am I not worthy of, you know? So
space.
Yeah, like, you know, but we are the representation that we longed for. And that brings me so much, like that is one of those realizations that takes me back every single time. So that's, you know, it's beautiful to be able to have this conversation and be able to witness your work and be in community with all of these incredible artists and designers and photographers who are the representation that is so necessary for the kids that are coming up now, especially since everything is so much more visible now. They can see us. We can't just hide behind the work anymore. It's like we need to be out there and letting people know, hey, it's me. I'm a Black man that's creating this. I'm a queer person that's creating this. I'm this, it's important. And yeah, man, it's beautiful. Oh, really quick. You said, I'm sorry, you mentioned the takeoff piece, and I didn't want to skip that.
Sorry, like bringing to go.
I didn't want to skip over that. That piece, let me say, it happened very fast. Obviously, it was very tragic, and it's amazing how this happened, right? I remember hearing that Offset passed, and I'm like, man, that's like hometown homie right there. Like growing up in Atlanta, Migos, more so in my high school years, but Migos was like in a force. So it felt like I lost somebody that I grew up with, right? Because that's like in the South, everybody's family. But yeah, my friend that I went to college with, she reached out to me and she was like, we don't have a lot of time, but do you think that you could create a memorial piece for Takeoff? And I think I had a total of a day, And I say 6 hours I took to create the actual composition. The rest of that time and that night was to get feedback from the family, swap out things, additional images, things like that. So it was maybe, I would say, a grand total of 24 hours that we rented out that piece. And it was an honor to do it because Takeoff means a lot to my city, and to be able to create something for a hometown hero, especially a memorial piece to honor him. And it was amazing. And my mom saw it on CNN. And she was like, my son did that way. My mom is like Facebook warrior. So I'm popular over there. Okay. But yeah, it was beautiful and it was amazing and it was poetic. So I'm glad I got to create that.
Well, Fred, thank you so much for taking us down your journey of your career and what you're doing, and just like inspiring just like new people as far as like arts and creatives, and just sharing some of the lessons you learned. And I really appreciate you being on Social Studies Show, man. Thank you very much.
Man, thank you for having me. This is great.
If you enjoy the Social Studies Show, please hit like and subscribe. If you found the information in the program relevant and insightful, copy the link. Share it with your friends. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. These small gestures help increase the awareness and growth of our show. Thank you.